Hello, and welcome to our weekly HudUniGamescast, coming to you yet again from our home offices, normally University of Huddersfield. My name is Duke, and today I am joined by Matt and Daryl, and
Hello.
we're going to talk about, interesting stuff, announcements, and some things that have happened. Well, it's always interesting, but it's not a specific thing this week. So let's roll the intro, and then we'll get into it. Cool. Oh, let's put that intro off there. I think the fade didn't quite finish it. So, it's week 18 of our vlogging. Can anyone remember how many we did in the office before we went? How many is this 15?
Hardly any.
13, 14 at home. It's quite amazing. We've done more from our home offices.
Way more, yeah.
From work, which is. Oh no! Look, Reese says I ruined the intro. I think you're right.
Everyone's saying you're a bit quiet as well.
A little quiet. Okay.
How did you ruin the intro? What does that even mean?
I cut it off too soon in the fade out part. So
rank amateur.
I know. Well, yeah, that's me. I like to.
You've got all the toys, but none of the timing.
I like to leave something to make other people feel better about their own streams. Oh, still quiet. Boost my mic in OBS. Okay. Oh, I don't want to boost it that much. Let me have a look at my gain here.
I can hear you perfectly fine. It sounds totally normal to me.
No, but it's not you that I need to talk to, is it?
No. It's just odd that it's something's going peculiar when it's been broadcast.
I'll turn up the gain to the microphone, so let's see what somebody says. But while my voice is quiet, maybe I'm just feeling quiet today. We should get to what we do, which is
to answer your question, we did 4 Gamescasts in the office.
Did we? 4.
Yeah.
So wow, we're 14.
14 here.
14 wow.
That's a bit.
So yes, we are on 18. We are motoring through them. I think, and our weekly or what's on the box needs to come first. I think before we get into today. I can't remember the order. Daryl changed the order, so
I think you're going first.
I'm going
You'll find out soon enough, won't you?
Well, I will. Yeah, you ready?
Yeah.
Briefly before, for those who've not seen it, Matt, do you want to remind us what's on the boxes?
What's in the box is you read the description on the back of a games box and you see if you can guess what the game is just based on the description. But again, Duke has failed to load my amazing little intro video for this.
Oh, didn't I? Hang on.
You're not going to have it set up.
Oh, you know what it is? It's because we've moved to the thing, Dropbox for storage. What's it called?
Hey everyone, welcome to Amateur Hour.
No, this isn't amateur hour. This is just Duke's everyday life.
Here we go.
Oh, has he got it? He's got it. Except it's not been broadcast, is it?
The box. Who's in the box? What's in the box?
Oh, no sound now.
What's in the box?
I need to pin your thing. That's where I've gone wrong. I just realised. I was wondering why I was getting Matt popping up full screen on the Zoom.
Anyway, there we go. We'll remember to include that for next week. I say we'll remember, but we'll try and remember.
It's a very, very random thing I did.
It is. Maybe that's why I keep accidentally forgetting to put it in. Oh, it's me first with a random line in the middle. That's the end of the text, I think. So now this is going to be interesting. I think you will all get it straight away, but then I have a further question.
Okay.
Murder, road rage, pimping, bank raids, hijackings, armed robbery, extortion, adultery, smuggling, petty thievery, drug busts, police bribes, unlawful carnal knowledge, and double parking.
America in 2020.
I was waiting for something.
It's going to be a GTA game, surely. But which are you saying? Which one?
It'll be GTA 3.
Okay, so you're right in that it's GTA. So I guess 2 questions: which version, and who developed it?
No. If it's bank raids, actually, bank raids only came in GTA 5, I think, didn't it?
Do you want a moment?
And if you want to know the developer, it's Rockstar. So
why are you saying who developed? I don't understand. Yeah,
I know. I was
why
surprised.
Saying who developed it.
It wasn't
What?
Rockstar at the beginning.
What, for GTA 5?
No, it's not 5.
If it's not
It's
if it's not
one.
GTA,
Oh,
Which
Grand Theft Auto.
was on DOS and
Um,
was not by Rockstar.
Well, it was Rockstar before they became Rockstar.
Well, it depends. You see, I thought that, and then I jumped into Wikipedia, which knows everything, obviously, and it lists like the PlayStation one, I think it is, as Rockstar, but it lists the DOS one as ASC Games.
Did they do the port?
Well, did it port to DOS or did it come from DOS and Windows to console? I was just looking and then I went and loaded it, lost it. Here we go.
well, I don't.
So it says developers.
One of the many ollies, as just
Sorry,
pointed
it should
out,
say publisher,
it
not
was. I mean, as
developer.
far as it says DMA on the box, and it is right. It's a DMA design.
Yeah, sorry,
it's
no,
a DMA
I
design
meant
game.
publisher.
So.
I meant publisher, not developer. It was. See, if you go to publisher.
Yeah, but they weren't their own publisher at the time, were they?
No. Well, they did publish on Game Boy Color. So Windows DOS was.
I think you should clearly do more research before saying this. It's just, well, I'm just very tempted to spend like 10 minutes in Wikipedia now. We haven't got time because we're doing a live stream. So,
No, but as I say, anyway, yeah. So ASC, which threw me actually the logo. I was like, pardon, what? So yeah, memory failed there. So, well done. You guessed.
I don't think we got it right because we went 3 and 5.
I didn't say anything. I just said GTA, so clearly I got it right.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on. So Matt's box, right? You ready? Matt's box coming up.
Okay, so this is nice and short, nice and brief. You should get this really easily. A rookie cop's first day on the job, a student searching for her missing brother, a city on the verge of collapse.
Sounds like a really bad movie. Something like, that you'd see like it'd score 4 on IMDb. No, don't know.
It's all in the chat. Unfortunately, I read it all in the chat, and I went, "Oh yeah, obviously, yeah."
Oh yeah.
As
soon as I looked over, yeah.
I shouldn't have looked. I should
Yeah.
have had it hidden. In fact, in future, when I'm playing this, I am going to hide the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine.
So
Doesn't help.
yeah.
Resident Evil 2. I was quite surprised at how little description there is on the box.
Which one did they redo recently? The good one?
This one. This we did Resident Evil 2, and then they've redone
Actually-
Resident Evil 3, but the consensus from people out that I know that have played it have gone, yeah, it's really short and nowhere near as good as a remake as that one.
Guys, can you hide your chat? Make sure you guys can't see the chat.
Okay, I'll hide chat for a second.
Yeah, and then when we go to my box, then at least I'll be able to see whether people are guessing correctly, but you guys won't.
Okay.
Because I think mine's going to be one of those like that. Resident Evil 2. I got sort of in my head that I knew what that was, and it was instantly confirmed on the chat. So. And I think mine's going to be exactly the same. Everyone in the chat's going to go completely mad and know instantly what it is. I want to see if you guys can get it now.
Mine was the other way around. I saw the chat and they went, "Oh yeah."
Okay. Go on then.
Ready? Daryl's box.
Yeah. Okay. The corporation is draining our planet of its life forces. Somebody, a cold-hearted mercenary, accepts a mission from a group of eco-warriors, unaware that it will lead him on a journey that will change not just his life, but the lives of every soul in the universe. Welcome to an epic adventure where sorcery and science collide, where friendships are lost and won, and where one man can make a difference that lasts forever.
Final Fantasy VII? The Shinra Corporation? I think. It makes sense. Eco Warriors are Tifa and Barrett and all that lot, and then one mercenary is Cloud. So I'm going with Final Fantasy VII.
I agree.
Damn it! I thought by anonymizing it, I might have just got.
God, I haven't played that for a long time.
I want to play the remake, but I'm just not paying the price for it.
It'll be on a sale one day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Okay, so let's move on to a reminder: open days. So if we have anyone watching who is not yet a student or obviously a grad, we have open days coming up, virtual ones. So a reminder that they exist still. They're virtual. There will be no physical presence. But on the 2 days that are coming up, both Matt and I will be in the They're using a system called Unibuddy, which allows for streaming of PowerPoint and things like that, and also chat and video. So if you are a prospective student and applicant, a reminder that there are open days at the end of June. So it's next Wednesday and the following Wednesday. So just a reminder really to sign up. Do you want to add anything, Matt, or I think I've covered everything there?
No, it should be interesting trying to do an open day from my bedroom.
Well, that's all right, because I've still got to get rid of our nursery's still got decorations in it. So yeah, that's part of
You
the
really do need to
current
sort that
situation.
into a proper permanent study at some point, don't you?
I know,
you want
yeah,
to be stuck there for the best part of a year.
And one of them steamy things to pull off the stripes.
Oh, it's
Maybe I should
Matt,
just
I meant, not you. It's
Oh,
just,
might as
yeah.
well.
Well, both of you.
Yeah. Anyway, we don't quite have the same level of collection of statues you do, but
You're not as old as me. Give it time.
Yeah. So another thing, Matt, you wanted to put this in a reminder.
Yeah, the Steam Game Festival went live yesterday, and part of the festival is, I think we mentioned it last week, but just as a reminder that Mirror Tale has gone live with a demo. So if you're interested in what they're making, right, you head over to there and download the demo, give it a play. And if you come across any bugs or suggestions or anything, jump on the Discord and give them the feedback. I noticed yesterday there was a few people posting GIFs of interesting bugs that they'd discovered. So
yeah, I saw that. Was really handy.
It's all really useful information for the students making that.
Yeah.
So worth going to go and grab it and have a play of it.
I dropped a link in the chat, Twitch chat. So yeah, we thought we'd do something slightly different this week. So we've been looking at what students have submitted and things like that, and then we thought we'd do just a catch up on news.
Yeah,
this came about, I think, from that Unreal Engine 5 launch in the middle of a cast, wasn't it? When we were all blown away, we thought we'd better do some discussion about that.
Yeah. I think it'd be quite interesting to get chat involved as well. See what their thoughts are of some of the topics that we're going to discuss.
Yeah. Feel free to chip in and any thoughts, comments, or concerns, I suppose, as well. So the obvious one, Unreal Engine 5, I guess is the one that leaps out. Matt, I'll let you lead on this one. I think you had a couple of things you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so we might as well jump straight in and watch the trailer, which is hopefully on the next.
It is.
Yeah.
You should be able to hear this just a little bit.
Hello, I'm Brian Karras, Technical Director of Graphics here at Epic Games.
Do you want me to jump forward a bit? Or you happy with this?
Yeah, let's jump forward to when it actually.
A few years ago, we got
off.
together as a team and brainstormed what we thought we could push forward state-of-the-art.
I can do that, can't I?
There you go.
There. Need to find a way to stop Google Slides doing that.
Okay, so hopefully you've actually been and watched this already. If not, definitely worth going to have a watch of the whole trailer in detail afterwards. But this was Unreal and Epic's little teaser trailer for Unreal Engine 5 and some of the technology that they've been implementing behind the scenes. Now, I think it's worth discussing some of the technology, not from a pure game dev perspective, but actually from a games education perspective, because some of the claims that they make, I think students can misinterpret sometimes to what that actually means. So one of the bits that we will that they talk about right here is nanite technology, which they're basically virtualization geometry. And one of the claims that they make is that you can export directly from ZBrush and you never have to do any type of optimization again, which on the surface of it sounds absolutely awesome until you delve a little bit deeper into what that technology is and its strengths and its limitations. So the nanite technology, which I think they describe as, I think they just call it virtualizing geometry. From what I can tell, It looks very sort of similar in its execution to simplification of voxel technologies, or sparse voxel trees, and trying to basically do one voxel per pixel of a screen. And in this case, it looks like they're trying to do one polygon per pixel of the screen, so that you're only rendering the amount of geometry that you need to actually render that screen at. And if you go back and look at some research papers over the last 10 plus years, there's been lots of different attempts at this type of technology. And it looks like they've finally managed to implement it in real time, usable sort of process. Now, again, what you're looking at is this running on next generation hardware. So this is probably graphics card wise the equivalent of a 30 series RTX card, or this is probably a 2080 Super, maybe in SLI, just to try and push this out. I know they
did say 2070 minimum, didn't they?
Yeah, so it's pretty high end. And if you look at Steam's, because Steam do the little surveys every year about what hardware people are using, I think it's something like 4% of people are using anything above a 2070. So it's not going to be like the mainstream are going to get access to this technology day one. This is in reality a few years out. But from our perspective and the education perspective, I think the really interesting bit is that claim that you can just directly export from ZBrush. And in reality, I bet you can. And I bet you can just take your model, you hit the export button, you get a giant OBJ file, which is that is probably like a gig in size, and you import it into Engine. What's that? Isn't this running off PS5? They do say it's running off the PS5, but the announcement for the PS5 is that the graphics card is next generation AMD, which no one actually has yet. So if you take it into comparison terms, it's 2080 plus in terms of hardware for the PS5. But that idea of just exporting directly from ZBrush into your engine, you've got a whole host of technical limitations there that you've got to take into consideration. First is compression. How do you take a 1 gig OBJ file and make it so it runs and every single asset isn't a gig in size? The second is what do you do about UVs and texturing? And that's part of one of the bigger discussions of if anyone's been keeping track of Substance Designer and Substance Painter and their updates, is that they've in the last couple of updates they've been sort of pushing their automatic UV generation tools, which again are really cool and awesome. And for something like a rock, or in the case of, they talk about the statue a lot that we're seeing as she's wandering around. In the case of the statue, it's something that you could possibly take out of ZBrush, bring it into Substance, run an automatic UV generator on it, put on the procedural textures that Substance allows you to put onto stuff, and then export that. And for a perfectly static object, it's probably fine. But as you notice, the quality and fidelity between the environment and the character are quite stark. And that's because the character will not be using nanite, because you've got the problem now then of how do you rig it? How do you make sure they've got animations? Now you could use something like proxy rigs, proxy meshes, to be able to work out how to have an animator, rig an animator low poly version, and then you transfer that animation data onto your nanite version. But just looking at the quality fidelity is that between the two, I'm guessing that's not what they're doing there. So this is going to be an awesome bit of tech in a few years' time, once the other technical pipelines have been solved and once the other technical pipelines have developed a little bit. It's always that case of, when you bring in a new technology, you solve one problem, but you open up 2 or 3 other technical problems with it. All we have to do is go back to when the normal map was first introduced. Everyone went, this is amazing, this is the next big thing. We never have to do all of this low poly sort of manipulation of vertex data and things like that again. But as we all know, normal maps are a pain to actually work with. So you solve one problem, you introduce many more. So I see a lot in our Discord when it first got announced as students saying, "Oh, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to worry about UVs." You do, but you have to worry about them in a different way now. And I think that's always the case when we talk about game dev, and especially game education, when you're learning from the very beginning. For those students going to be coming into first year, they might be seeing the stuff that they're looking at now and going, "Oh, well, that's what we're going to be producing in week one of our learning how to make games." Yeah, no, this is a long way down the road, and I think you can actually piggyback on this and go, if you look at a lot of this environmental stuff, it's all photogrammetry data, which is quite interesting to me, because that's what I'm sort of deep in researching at the moment. And that photogrammetry process is most of it's coming from libraries, which makes game education even harder. So with the announcement of Unreal Engine 5, a few months before came the announcement that Megascans was now free to everyone. And that's awesome if you're a game developer, because now you have access to this massive library of photogrammetry data. But if you're a student, that now makes it even harder for you, because you want yours to look like that, but you have to learn the process of capturing the data.
It's always a good excuse to push students towards more stylized pieces of work that are in an art style that can't be just simply photogrammetry. And this is, you know, these hyperreal games have their particular niche in the market, but not all games look like that. To go back to your other point as well, I mean, this is simply just one engine. I know a lot of studios are now starting to use Unreal Engine, but it is one of many engines that are out there. So the entire pipeline, the methodologies by which you would manipulate objects and get them into engine, they're still going to be diverse. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
I'll also add to what you were saying there about, you know, they don't, in week one we're not doing this. You know, it's a bit like nobody starts in a Formula 1 car. You go through karts and Formula 3000 and everything else before you get to this. You can't just jump in and make incredible assets like this without going through that learning process and skipping out that early
Technically,
skill set.
You could miss it out, but
you'll
once
crash
you're
on the first corner.
no, you could do it. No, you could get the end result if you're a good sculptor. You could sort of good sculptor the tools they could build this sort of stuff, but it doesn't. If they're asked to do something that actually requires the sort of like the base skill set, the unwrapping and the sort of like complex texturing that isn't automatically generated, then you've got to learn how that process is done at some point.
And I think that's key. The basics are the one, because, like we said, you could go into Megascans and you could grab a load of assets, and you could go into Substance. So you can use the auto-generated texturing materials in there, and you can texture that way. You could, and there's a lot of ways you can jump past all of the basic steps that people need to know, and you can get something in engine relatively quickly and it look good. But you have not demonstrated that you actually understand any of that pipeline. And so if you need to go and troubleshoot it, if you need to go and optimize, if you need to go and make it so it doesn't run on just the 4% of graphics cards out there, then you're going to struggle. And this is what we see sometimes with students, not to this extent, but sometimes they'll be testing on their machine at home, and let's say they've got a 2070 or even a 2080, and they go, "Oh, it runs perfectly fine on mine," but it doesn't run on anyone else's because you've only tested it on that. And that's probably one of the bigger parts of game dev, is actually optimization, making sure it works, getting it ready for release. We've got Gary in the chat, and I'm sure he'll chime in there saying that is massive headache of just making sure that you're optimized for if you're going PC anyway, for a whole range of different hardware.
He keeps adding things in as well. There's an interesting note about the speed of SSDs, about how important that is. I know yesterday I was running some tests on my old SSD, and the progression there. My SSD from a couple of years ago running at 500 megasecond versus my NVMe drives running at 3,500 megasecond. You know, the SSD technology and NVMe technology is moving so fast that we're able to pull off you're talking about a gigabyte OBJ file, to load a gigabyte OBJ file off a spinning drive. When they were talking, old IDE cables were 30 megabytes a second. It would have taken forever. So we need the fast storage as well as the GPU to render it once it's in memory as well. And then, isn't a common? I was reading yesterday about a common practice now is 16 gig on all game releases as a requirement, not minimum, but as a suggested. So 16 gig of RAM. I mean, so there's another thing that's increasing as well, isn't it? RAM to hold this stuff.
Yeah, like there was a really nice video released a few weeks ago, if anyone saw it, by Linus Tech Tips, where he basically did an apology to Mark Cerny and Tim Sweeney, who's head of Epic, because basically they said that the PS5 SSD was best in class, and there was nothing that competed with it. And Linus, being the big PC master race that he is, basically called them out on it and said, "You're lying. It can't be. I've got this super fast SSD here that costs £10,000 and it can beat yours." And he had to do an apology announcement, basically to say, "I didn't understand what you meant. You didn't say it was the fastest. You said it was the best in class." And that was basically because it's written from the ground up for one purpose only, to load game data as fast as it possibly can and as efficiently as it possibly can. Whereas generalized SSDs for PCs have to do lots of different tasks of read-write cycles, all the different things. Whereas the one for the PS5, it's got one job only.
Is that QCF then?
Well, it's custom.
No, but QCF is 4 bits of storage. I think it's really, really fast read, but terrible write, if memory serves. So anyway, it doesn't off tangent. But yeah. Okay. Have we covered UE5?
Well, if you just go to the next slide, there was another which we can talk about very briefly. Another bit of technology which isn't quite as controversial as the nanite, but was the Lumen system, which is what was creating all of the nice ambient bounce light in the demo. And Lumen is just basically a new dynamic global illumination system. Now, I know that my students probably we've looked at global illumination in the past and different ways of doing it. And essentially with game engines, you just always cheat in the way that you do it for real is with ray tracing. But the Lumen system isn't a ray trace system. It's sort of a voxelized screen space sort of system. So it's predicting, not predicting, sort of estimating what the light should be in a particular region of the environment, and that's how you're getting this really nice bounce light without it costing as much as ray tracing. So from making your environments look really good in the future, I think this is going to be one of those that really does push the fidelity of games more than nanite, because being able to rely on a GI system that isn't really expensive will be, to a certain extent, more important for game dev than real-time ray tracing.
One of the things that I really liked about the demo that they showed is the automatic exposure control as well. I mean, that's probably part and parcel of the same system, but it's probably the nicest version of that I've seen so far. It felt very natural. It felt like it was emulating how your eye adjusts to changes in light, rather than feeling. Duke probably knows more about this sort of stuff than I do, but it didn't really feel like a camera adjusting. It felt like the eye was naturally adjusting to it. And of course, the other thing is, of course, we're not seeing this in HDR, are we? So there's probably elements of it that are not quite so obvious at first that are going to be really powerful as well.
Yeah, and there's really, and as Gary's saying in the chat there, that actually that's one bit of technology that, unlike the nanite, which saying we're not going to need normal maps and things like that anymore. The Lumen system means that we probably don't have to do light baking anymore, because light baking, most of the time you're baking down global illumination because you can't run it in real time. But now that if we can actually have a simplified GI system that actually runs in real time,
I just love the fact that Gary's going, "Oh, I don't want to do this," and I'm just in the back of my head going, "Yeah, but they want it porting down to some crappy Nintendo device, and you'll have to do it anyway."
yeah,
So-
there is, there is always that. But yeah, that is the thing, is that we can have this on really high end stuff, but as soon as we want this on lower end hardware, we either have to take a hit or we have to start baking again. So
Yep, and that's not going to go anyway anytime soon. It's going to be probably another decade before people are always porting down to mobile. It's going to be a decade or so before mobile's fast enough to run this in real time.
So as somebody points out, how computationally heavy is it? We don't really know yet.
No, we don't
do
know.
we?
But we're
Let's hope
assuming
it's-
based on
let's hope it's
hardware, and
lightish.
that hardware is always going to lag behind somewhere, isn't it?
But I mean, as my PhD supervisor once said, when I made a real-time algorithm that took 8 hours per frame, and I said, "Well, that's not real time," and he said, "It will be one day."
Absolutely, yeah,
so-
yeah, totally. I mean, I used to have the same conversation. I said this to my students probably a couple of years ago when real-time ray tracing finally appeared, and I've been saying that was going to happen. But then again, someone who maybe me has been saying that normap's going to go away sooner or later, and that's not happened yet, has it?
Anyway, onwards. PlayStation 5. Is it good? I guess we'll wait and see.
So hopefully everyone managed to watch the reveal conference thing the other day. And
I think I was playing Sea of Thieves, but I caught up with it later.
yeah, there was some. I would say, from my point of view, there's some really interesting demos in there, and there were also some disappointing demos.
Yeah,
I think
Gran Turismo 7 looked like Gran Turismo 6 at a glance. I didn't really delve into it. It didn't look like a leap forward.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah, the Digital Foundry guys did a little bit of a deep dive on the GTA 7 trailer, and it does look like it's using things like real-time ray trace reflections and real-time ray trace global illumination and things like that. But the result from all of that computational processing isn't leaps and bounds ahead of 6. But I was in a discussion with someone the other day, basically saying that this is the problem: is that if anyone remembers the PS4 announcement and the PS3 announcement and the PS2 announcement, is that they all follow the same cycle of everybody is expecting these giant leaps forward, and what you get is a slight incremental leap at the beginning, and then by the end of the generation you get your big leap forward. So right now we've got like The Last of Us 2 coming out on the PS4, which looks amazing. Now just compare that to the things that got announced at the very beginning of the PS4's life cycle.
But that's just because we're in a 4-year cycle, isn't it? Game cycle. Plus, your programmers haven't figured out how to get the best out of the hardware yet. So it's all that stuff comes at the end.
Yeah, everybody working in studios has to upskill on all the tools that are now required and the techniques, and it's not that straightforward. Unless you've had people developing in a little closed bubble for 4 years specifically to hit this particular point and go, this is the best this console's capable of, you're never going to see that. And just think of the costs involved in that. No one's going to pay for that.
Oh yeah. Now you're only going to get your big first-party studios that have had access to the hardware for quite a while. You've had, and maybe even an input into the development of the hardware, that are going to be able to push the system at the very beginning. Your third party, your smaller studios, they're just basically working on really high-end PC hardware and hoping they can push that. So some of the demos that you saw were cool, but not amazing.
I hope they haven't gone nuts on the price. It leaked yesterday, didn't it, at 500 quid, which is, I mean, I think I paid 550 for my PS3. So, it's they've not, like certain mobile phone companies with named after a fruit, their phones seem to get more and more and more every year. About 1,500 quid for the biggest iPhone. It's just getting ridiculous. But I'm happy to see that the Sony haven't gone following a similar trend. I'm also quite like the digital version of the PS5. Without the CD, without the CD slot, DVD slot, whatever it is.
Blu-ray. So you went back a few generations there.
Yeah, no, my brain was like, what are we in now?
So, what's the slot on the front for? Is that because it's not
Blu-ray.
got?
That's your Blu-ray.
There is a version without a Blu-ray. Then,
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so
there's-
it was just at the end of the trailer there, actually. I think it
Oh,
showed
right.
it.
So I was just trying to Google it very quickly.
So there's a normal version, and then what they're calling the digital edition.
you
No,
see
I didn't know they got a physical media base.
Yeah,
I
you see
thought
it's
it was all
missing on the
digital.
right hand side here. There's no port, no Blu-ray.
Yeah. I'd not. Yeah,
It's
I
not-
just missed that
it's
completely.
digital only. I don't know if there's a price difference. I don't know. Didn't notice.
I would hope that there'd be quite a large price difference, but in terms of hardware, like a Blu-ray disc is what for a manufacturer about a $5 to put in it. So it's not like they're going to knock £100 off the price just for removing the Blu-ray. But
No.
there was a discussion on a I can't remember which one it was, but basically saying maybe Sony will take a hit on the digital edition and recoup that cost through the digital store, because digital software tends to be priced higher than physical, or can keep that price for longer anyway.
There's going to be less, unless we progress. There's going to be less and less call for places like Game to even exist. You know, what are you really going there for?
But the advantage of your Blu-ray, I'd be tempted to go Blu-ray because you can sell it. You
Well,
pay
that's what I
50,
mean,
50
but-
quid
but-
for a game, you can pass it on for 20,
Yeah,
30 quid.
Yeah.
You can't.
But
because
again, we go back to what we were talking about earlier. I just don't like paying that sort of money. Like my sort of sweet spot for a really sort of top end game is about 25 quid, and for something I'm not particularly fussed about, less than a tenner. I don't.
You're not.
Very
You're,
rare.
you're old.
No,
now.
I know I'm old, but it's
That's because you
still-
spend your money on those things behind you as opposed to getting.
Well, yeah, but I can sell these, mate.
But that's the argument for digital. Like all my Switch games, I always try and get physical. I mean, I know PC you can't now, but well, very few. But Switch, and I don't have any consoles left other than the Switch. But I'm always trying to buy because my Steam library's got, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games in it. There's plenty of games in there I've either never played or probably will never play, but I can't pass them on. Whereas physical, you get half your money back.
Yeah, there is that.
Frustrates me.
But I suppose it ultimately, essentially, because it's been announced by all developers have to presume that the game is running off the SSD. So that disk drive is that when you put the disk into the machine, all it's basically just going to install it to the SSD, and your disk then becomes a DRM.
But how many
disk.
games will you fit on these things? Because if you games these days are well over 100 gig. How big's the drive in this thing?
880 gig is available to the end user.
It's only
So you're looking
games,
about
maybe?
you're looking
10
about
games?
10 games on it. But this is maybe then you have to if it's fast storage and fast transfer, you can maybe do uninstall it, reinstall it. The games
Still
that you
got to
actually
download it if you install it. If you're on a slowish connection.
No, but not all games are that large, though, are they?
No, I know.
Some
I'm
games are
thinking
quite
AAA,
small.
Yeah, big AAA ones. I
So
know
Ash,
that, Squadrons
sorry,
tiny,
Ash,
isn't it?
Ash has just put in the chat 450 and 350 November 20th. Is that based on anything in particular? Is that a guess? What is that?
I'd pay 350, and I don't even have it. I wouldn't.
No,
I'd never bought a phone.
I don't think it would be that. That's probably just Amazon put. It looks like it's going from an Amazon reserve page for the thing. It's probably just they have to put a price in there to reserve it when they set up the website. So it's probably just someone at Amazon gone $399. There you go. That'll do.
I hadn't seen the post above Ash now, so thanks for that.
Somebody's added 130 gig for Modern Warfare. I know Squadrons everyone was surprised it's only 30 gig. Which I think 30 gig, and then my brain goes back in time, and I'm not as old as Daryl, obviously. No one is. But I go back to
1K
Windows.
chess.
Yeah, well, no, I'm thinking Windows came on 10 floppy disks. The entire operating system on 10 floppy disks. But well, I mean that's a long time ago, isn't it? But yeah, if you've got, I don't know, it'd be nice if you can have external space. And
yeah,
I know they've just launched all those 8 terabyte SSDs, NVMe's. I mean, so
I think press next on the side.
Sorry.
We've been staring at a pause video for a long time.
Sorry, I should switch to what we're looking at.
So this is I just put 2 of the games. So we've got two trailers here, and I think these are probably 2 of the games from the announcement. I think actually demonstrate the power of the PS5 and the direction in which we're going to be going in terms of visuals. First one is the new Horizon 2. Winter Wilds, I think it's called. And Daryl, have you seen this yet?
No.
No. So everything you see in here is all in-game
dodgy.
footage, and a lot of it is actually some of it is game footage as well, interspliced. So that underwater scene is game footage. Forbidden West, not Forbidden Wilds. Yeah,
That's nice.
Yeah.
The
That's
waves
very
weren't
nice.
very nice. The water's still a challenge, but these bits are lovely.
I always like to look at things like this and go, which generation of Pixar movies does this look like? Because we're way past that period. I mean, again, going back long enough, I was sort of saying, oh, yeah, games will look better than Pixar movies. Well, that happened a long time ago. There's many games out there that look much better than Toy Story 1 does.
We're not many generations from Avatar, though, I don't think, are we? Not
I
this
don't
generation.
know. I genuinely couldn't call it. It's I don't know. I often think there's some sort of AI tool that's going to come along at some point that is suddenly going to sort of get rid of that uncanny valleyness we're getting with characters. You're already seeing it with VFX, and it can't be much of a leap to transfer that to sort of a game's paradigm. So I'm expecting that to happen relatively soon. And because it's AI, I can't call it. It could happen tomorrow for all I know, or it could be 5 years away.
I think
I just don't understand it.
I think the next big leap. I think the next big leap in character modeling and character animation. Have you seen the tech demo by NVIDIA for DigiDug?
No.
Maybe we'll put that on next week. But that is probably that's getting towards that point where the difference between a real life footage and the digital version are becoming a little bit blurred. You can still see it, but it's getting close. But yeah, Horizon Zero Dawn, you can see here just the quality of the environment, the particle systems that are coming off it, the way that the light interacts with the different. You can see here on the ground and the snow as it's and they fly through the trees. Is that global illumination system that Lumens in Unreal Engine 5? It's called Lumens, but obviously for Guerrilla Games, they're using their own engine, which is probably using a very similar bit of technology in order to replicate that GI on the fog, on the water, on the different metallic parts. So that PBR pipeline really coming into effect. So I think we're getting to that point where this, I think, is demonstrating what games are going to be looking like going forward. And we haven't had anything that's really showed it off fully yet. Now, I think the next trailer.
I just wanted to watch that water again.
Well, while you're doing that, I just mentioned, have you seen the Corridor Crew Scorpion King video? Because that's really interesting from the perspective I was talking about before.
No, yeah.
Don't like that. And if anybody's watching it hasn't seen that, then you should go back and just watch that, because it's interesting what they can do in their spare time with modern technologies that was difficult to do on a movie budget only a few years ago.
Reese says, "You know how good a game is going to be depending on how good the water is." Absolutely. It just bugged me. That's all, Reese. Don't worry about it.
Is that why we've played far too many hours of Sea of Thieves now? Just because the water's cool.
Is the best water. Best water so far, not best water ever, obviously. Do you want me to hit play on this?
Yeah. So this next one.
Jump forward too many.
So this next trailer is from the new Ratchet and Clank, and I think the thing that is demonstrated really well in this for next generation leap forward is that, yes, the visuals are really nice and it kind of looks a little bit like it's a fully CG movie, but it's the SSD that's being showcased here, because one of the gameplay mechanics that they're going to have is that you get these rips in space and time where you jump from level to level instantaneously, and throughout the trailer you'll see that you jump through the thing. So that's the only way that can physically happen, is by having that SSD load that data quick enough that you don't actually see the load. So in most games now, if you wanted to change level, you'd have to have a loading screen while it unloaded the current level and loaded the next lot of assets into memory. Whereas that SSD, because it's so fast, is that they don't really need to load it into RAM. They can just cache it directly off the disk.
There's no you say it wouldn't be preloaded?
No, you can see here that's one of the big pushes, that if you watch the Mark Cerny tech demo about it, is that the SSD is that fast that they can basically just read straight from it into memory, so they don't have to pre-cache it or anything. So this is how these little jumps in space time as they go from level to level are loading almost instantaneously. Now you can see in that little special effect, the rip in space transition, that's very obviously a very quick loading screen. they're masking some kind of load in that, but it's almost to the speed where you don't notice it.
I assume this is streaming as well.
That's
getting most of it.
also utterly beautiful. You talk about the technology, but just that as for all the stuff that we've watched so far, I can't go watch it and go meh, yeah, meh, meh. I'm kind of you get very well. I'm very jaded as far as sort of like hyper real stuff, but when it comes to things like this that are really designed and have their own particular sort of flow and style to them, this for me ticks all the sort of boxes. That's absolutely beautiful.
I'd buy a PS5 for that game.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to go quite that far, but yeah,
That's only 350 quid. You can buy that.
What's the game?
I did.
Well, there's also the thing that I want to maybe buy that we're going to come up to against in a short while. Plus, there's still about 200 statues I want.
I do love the Ratchet Clank games. I just wanted to point out that Reese put in the chat, and I nearly put the trailer in for it, Reese. The Kuna, is it called Kuna? Kena, Bridge of the Spirits. I didn't put it in this, but Daryl, after this, it's definitely worth going and have a look at that, because that's another tech demo trailer that has that really cutesy, really polished vibe to it, and I think that's probably my third most interesting game that at the PS5 launch.
Reese did mention it earlier, further up in the chat.
But actually, there's a bit of sort of synchronicity between all the stories we've done so far. When we're sort of just looking at this and watching the way that the characters move in this, and some of the, that's not as polished as it could be, the animation. But we talk about animation all the time, and people have always said to me, "Well, yeah, but mocap solves your problems," and you're going, "Well, yeah, but it can't solve all your problems. You still always need animators to do precisely this sort of thing." I hope.
You hope. Yeah. And just to point out that very last shot of Clank there, they've made a big deal about the fact that it is real-time ray tracing on Clank. Just on his reflections, which I thought was a really, really funny way of just announced. Yeah, we've used ray tracing because it's a buzzword, but only on Clank.
Yeah, just him. Okay, onwards. This was a bit of news that I don't know if there are any motorsport fans in our student body, but Le Mans was cancelled this year for obvious reasons, because there's normally like 250,000 people turn up in one small space. But so they moved it to September, but they didn't want to lose the weekend, so they ran 24 hours of Le Mans virtual. So it used the R Factor 2 game. They built, there were 50 cars, 50 teams. They did LMP and GTE. And then they built teams from sim racers and from real world racers. So F1 drivers like Alonso, Jensen Button, people like that were racing, as well as big names in eSports. And I really wanted to raise this because it's been touted as the largest eSports sim race ever. Some people have questioned whether it's been the largest ever, but I think it can't be far off. I watched it most of the weekend. I had it on whatever device I had near me. It was streaming to, and it was It was really impressive. There were two big technical failures where they red flagged, and there were some server issues. And two teams dropped it. Alonso and another team, Redline, I think it was Alonso. Anyway, two teams ended up dropping out for server issues. There was an amazing bit in the middle actually where. One of the drivers had a spare sim rig, so this is a sim rig, too expensive for a lay person to afford, kind of thing, Fanatec stuff. And it crashed in the middle. His rig froze, so he leapt off and got another one and plugged it in and carried on driving, which was captured on the camera, which was amazing to watch. And it was to watch it. It had the same commentators as normal Le Mans. And the driving was as professional. People weren't just knocking each other off the track as normal Le Mans. and it just made for. I think we've got a video here of the highlights. It made for an almost legitimate replacement, or legitimately an almost acceptable replacement. It was incredible to watch. Oh, he got a penalty for that start. But if we jump forward a bit, let's just jump forward to here. Some of the night racing. I mean, you know, they only had one class of LMP and one of GT, but I think it's worth mentioning because this could be a huge change, because for two reasons. One, you've got all your traditional Le Mans people now watching eSports, and then you've got all the eSports people seeing like real drivers and real commentators and the engineering that goes into that, and that crossover. It's not going to. It'll never replace. Sorry, not never. It won't replace Le Mans, at least in the short term. But
the only thing you're missing there, they're just looking at the replay, and the car was bouncing off the side.
Yeah. Oh, there's no.
A lot of people will watch F1 and things like that for the first corner in those crashes. So
yeah, it has mechanical damage, but they don't have visual damage. I know iRacing's got visual damage coming in on some of their models, but yeah, it just does that. It just bumps into it. But they do have lost a spoiler, but they don't have any physical dents or scratches. But they have fuel, they have tires. I mean, some of these teams, the pro teams, had like 4, 5, 10 engineers working on race strategy like they would in real Le Mans. It was amazing. I think they said 63 countries. So you had like Jenson Button was in LA. There was one guy in New Zealand, all racing. There's my favorite Aston, came second, I think. I think it's just worth mentioning that really is a bit of a milestone in that the real pro drivers aren't dismissing it as a thing. It's not just a game; it's a simulation. And they were all saying how close it is to the real thing. The eSIM racers were still faster. The sim racers, sorry, just a little bit, because they've never driven the real thing, so they're not used to using their bodies to corner. They're used to.
You've not shown us here. Are they playing here in VR or against the screen?
No, all of them were on screens. There was one guy who normally does VR, but he didn't for this because of the 24-hour element.
Yeah,
everyone was on.
There is an issue of depth perception with this, isn't there?
That's what. Yeah, the pro drivers were saying. They normally corner. They judge the road by the feel through their bodies. They're not. And they were all getting They said they were getting very tired eyes because they had to rely on their eyes instead of the physical motion. Whereas the sim racers, of course, have never done the physical, so they just use their eyes. But yes, the depth perception is particularly interesting, I think. And in the end, no one did pure VR.
Yeah,
there we go. If I'd seen that first, I would have known, wouldn't I?
I just want to point out the hilarious comment there of when you said there was 10 engineers working on strategies, and we've got in the comments, hold the trigger down harder. 7 engineers agreed.
Well done, Reese. Well, no, because weirdly, one of the teams, they had a strategy change in the last. I won't go into the detail, but they had a strategy change, which to fuel, which meant that they finished the race with I think it was a quarter of a tank, and they couldn't do the in lap, so they couldn't finish once you finish, you go around one more lap. They couldn't finish that because they ran out of fuel, because they were so close to the strategy is incredible. It's a bit like cycling or football, I guess. It's not really about the athlete so much. It's more about all the strategies that go into it. But anyway,
I think it's a really cool. As you said, that there's so many esports that kind of get dismissed. The audience for esports is just ridiculous, and now the mainstream are starting to accept it a little bit more. And I think if we're going to talk about we talked about Gran Turismo 7 a bit earlier about it, that trailer didn't really showcase what was next cutting edge about it. But looking at these demos, I think the next thing will be, can they get that damage in there? Can they get that physical? As you, instead of bumper cars, you actually start seeing the scratches, the dents being put into them. And then I think if you can then do that, your mainstream might take a little bit more notice of it as well.
Yeah, the thing that throws it off, actually, we just saw an example of it there. The only thing that ruins it is the unrealistic camera angles, like when it just orbited the car. Other than when they do the unrealistic cameras, it is really, really good, really impressive. I mean, we're watching on a big screen here. When I'm watching it on the tablet or something, just in the garden, you could mistake it for the real thing. It's really, really good. Really impressive.
Will
And
they be
what's-
doing a Le Mans 24-minute version just for people with attention spans like mine?
Maybe. What I think the thing that I'm impressed with most, above all else, is it's inclusive. This game, R Factor 2, is like 15, 20 quid, I think, on Steam. This map, Circuit de la Sarthe, is £10 on Steam. So you could, anybody on Earth with a computer fast enough, it's not particularly high spec, can do this race and compare yourselves with these drivers. There's no way you can do that in F1 or Le Mans because you need millions of pounds in car and staff. So I love that, the fact that anyone could have entered this, actually, weirdly. If you had an FIA license and you could prove your speed, we could have put a team in. So obviously we couldn't because we're not fast enough. But you know what I mean. Any member of the public could have taken part in this race.
Are you saying you're not this good?
I'm not this good. No. Actually, I don't know. To be honest, I haven't tried, but I'm going to assume I'm not this good. That model of the Ferrari was only available the week before because Ferrari have never licensed to R Factor 2 before. So they had to build that model just for this Le Mans, and it was ready 1 week before they raced. Which is
nice, interesting point there, because like in actual motorsports, is that a lot of the advantage that one team has over another is like how the engineers put the car together, how it's built, the fuel, blah blah blah, etc. All of the engineering gubbins. You don't really have that in the digital version. Is that one car is basically identical to another?
Well, actually, you would think so, but they can tweak so much that they've spent months tweaking all sorts of, because you can change everything on the car: the suspension, the tires, the handling, all sorts of things can be tweaked on the car. So they start with the same model, but then they apply. In fact, there's a market in this. If there are people who sell setups to pro racers that they then can use to be faster. Because at this speed, you're talking about hundredths of a second over an 8.3 mile circuit. And it's 100th of a second difference between first and second.
So then
Character models in this, though. I'm just interested in their character models. Are they cardboard cutouts because of COVID?
I think because they're not that important to the race. I love the fact the brake discs glow, just like real life. In fact, I think I've got a photo. I've got a photo on my next.
On the next slide, yeah.
Yeah. So this is 2014. I think this was, or 2016. So this is a real photo. This is me looking down this pit straight from the wrong end. Unfortunately, I didn't take any pictures up there. And this is the virtual version. And
I love how you're saying this with no idea of which one.
Oh, cursor. Sorry, it's got a hidden cursor. The bottom picture is the real thing. The top picture is the virtual thing. I'm pretty certain everyone could see that without me explaining which is which. But it's really good. And when you're traveling, I mean, these cars do 200 mile an hour down the Mulsanne Straight. So when you're traveling that speed, I think everything looks real. So yeah, I've just put some stats there. It's over 24 hours, 4 drivers per team, 50 cars. It was global, as I say, in New Zealand, LA. There was a big headquarters in Paris, and it was official. It was a full FIA WC type event. It wasn't just a load of people sat around having fun in cars. It was a proper authorized. They got trophies and everything. So, anyway,
Cool.
I thought it was worth mentioning because it was a fantastic weekend. It doesn't replace the real thing, but it was very close. Onwards, we've gone past the hour.
Okay.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I better be quick. I've got a meeting at 1:15.
All right.
Well, we've got a couple of smaller announcements, more like just tidbits to make people aware if they didn't know. But Blender 2.83 just got released. If you click on next, you'll get a little trailer.
Before I move forward, there's a question: how did they manage ping and packet loss for global players? I don't know the answer, but I know that because of the issues, the R Factor 2, but the boss of R Factor 2, the software developer, put out a post announcement yesterday that they're basically analysing all the data and trying to figure out what went wrong when and how they solve it for the future. So I don't know the answers to that one specifically. I know they had some issues with this, and they had a mirrored server somewhere, so if it went down, they could switch. And there's a lot of interesting stuff to read about if it does interest you. But anyway, move on. So Blender.
So Blender, I know that a lot of our students, especially first years, are coming in wanting to use Blender, and Blender is awesome. So 2.8 got released several months back and introduced basically whole redesign of the interface, and with it came a load of awesome features. and 2.83 has just added even more awesome features. And I think it's that discussion that people keep having, and you keep seeing this discussion online, is will Blender replace Max and Maya and things like that? And
I think it's an inevitability at this stage.
I think it is, but it's one of those discussion points, and it's you can see it on all of the different major platforms for game dev, on Flip Normals and 80 Level and Gamma Sutra and all that. There's a lot of people talking about it, and it comes down to it's not industry standard because the dev tools are not designed for Blender. The dev tools are designed for Maya or Max. It's as simple as that. Is that you're not going to get a studio that has spent millions of pounds in R&D making tools that tie into Max and Maya jumping ship instantly. Now, in a few years' time, they might slowly transition those tools over to Blender as well. And I think as more and more people learn Blender from the start, now Blender just a few years ago, no one used it because the interface was horrendous, and everyone basically went, Blender's awesome but weird, why would you ever use it? But I think it's common knowledge now that Blender has some of the best features and most powerful features in the 3D modeling industry, in terms of it can beat out both Max and Maya for viewport rendering with its Eevee. It's got nowhere near as good as ZBrush, but it's got some awesome sculpting tools in there. It's got cloth physics, it's got hair physics, it's got everything built in that you would need. And actually, the bit I like about Blender is actually some of the plugins. Some of the plugins are amazing for it. Being able to do Boolean operations instantaneously without actually it ever affecting geometry and things like that. Another Blender propaganda. Yeah, and it's fully open source.
Yeah, but ultimately, I mean, the thing is with any of this, studios can incorporate it into a pipeline as long as its inputs and outputs are standard file types.
No, that's not what I was saying when they put it in the pipeline, because it's like with Maya, you use Python, with Max, you use MaxScript, and all your tools tie into that. So
yeah.
What's Blender's language?
I actually don't know. It used to be Ruby a long time ago, but I don't think it is now.
Ruby?
Wow. Yeah, that was a long time ago. I don't know modern day. But the reason why I just wanted to put this is that I had a couple of first years actually emailing me last week saying over the summer they've been using Blender most of this year and kind of trying to get to grips with Max and Maya at the same time. And they were like, which one should I be focusing on? Now, the answer is whichever one you prefer. But in my opinion, Max is probably the closest to Blender, because the Max stack and the Blender modifiers are kind of similar but slightly different. Blender uses Python.
Yeah, Google and Reese were about the same speed there. It's Python. Well, if Maya's Python as well, any studios using Maya might have a easier time. Depends what they're doing, of course. The interface to the system will be different. If there's any clever Python algorithms running, they should run the same.
Yeah. Now, I think the discussions are, it's kind of inevitable. The speed that Blender's going, it's just got a huge grant from Epic to actually continue development, and NVIDIA and AMD. So Autodesk are kind of being left behind in terms of pure game dev modeling. It kind of seems like Autodesk is more focused on their architectural visualization and CAD-based modeling, which is understandable. They probably make a lot more money from those than they do pure entertainment modeling. But if you're interested on playing around with some really cool features, take a look at Blender if you haven't already. It's pretty cool. So let's keep going. Let's keep the ball rolling.
Gary's saying enough Blender propaganda. So ZBrush Core Mini.
So Gary posted this into the Discord today. ZBrush have announced a new version of ZBrush, which is basically, from what I can tell, aimed entirely at students wanting to get into sculpting, because it's basically just pure sculpting tools. That's it. It doesn't do anything else other than the sculpting features.
Is it free?
Is it free? Yeah, I was about to ask that question.
End of students means free. Usually.
I think it is.
Draw
I
them
think
in.
that's just yeah.
Well, I'm waiting for Gary to pop it in the chat. He's already said that Autodesk have been resting on their laurels for a decade.
Free to download.
Yeah, ready to break free. Yeah, free to jump in. Yeah, so I think that's what it is. It's basically I think it's an introductory thing. So because a lot of students are using Blender to do their sculpting. I think ZBrush are like, well, let's get them looking at how powerful ZBrush is.
I hadn't even heard of this. You just sprung this on me. So does this allow you to import and export as normal?
It's just, the only thing it can do is sculpt. It can't do any poly painting. It can't do any Dynameshing type stuff or anything like that. It's just import. Well, it actually does Dynamesh, sorry. It doesn't do any type of UV or...
Do you still use this as 3D print now?
I presume so, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
Immediately alt-tabbed out and downloading it.
No, I've got a pro license to ZBrush. I don't need to worry about this, but it's still damned impressive.
Yeah, but it's really good for now that we can tell students before they even come on the course, just get ZBrush Core Mini and start practicing, start playing around with it. Cool, let's keep going.
I was thinking if you got Unreal and this, you sorted it. Well, I mean, obviously.
Well, it solves the problem for
text
colleges,
animation.
doesn't it? Colleges have never been able to afford to buy ZBrush, so the students come in not knowing a lot of sculpting software, but that really solves that problem instantaneously. That's awesome.
Next is Topogun.
So this is Topogun 3. So anyone old school watching will remember Topogun 2 from years and years ago as a retopology tool. And the guys that made that have now just announced the beta version of Topogun 3. So you can get in the beta for free right now and try it out. This is just a tool that only does retopology, but some of the features on it are awesome. As Gary says there, the king has returned. Exactly. Now, this actually ties into what we were talking about earlier about Unreal saying that you don't need to even do retopology anymore. We can just use nanites. Is actually, no, we still need to do retopology on our game assets. And what is going to help us do that is tools like Topogun that make it easier and quicker to actually do it. So we can use, there's some nice drawing tools. You can draw out topology and automatically do it. They have a voxel-based topology tool, so you can actually, so something like as complex as the ear, you can actually just say, auto-top it for me based on voxel density. And you can see the result of that and then link your own manually done stuff with the auto done stuff. So it's kind of like a little mixture between the two, being able to have a nice blend between manual topology and auto topology, and just seamlessly link the two together. So I think that's a one to go and have a play with right now while it's still in its free beta. I don't know how much it'll be when it comes out, but definitely want to keep an eye on.
Keep an ear out for that one. Right. Oh, Daryl, I think you wanted to spend your money. Sorry, announce
do I get a go?
Did you just upload a really low resolution still?
This is a video to go with. I did a placeholder.
There's a video.
It's the only one I could find actually. It was half decent.
Oh, there we go.
There's a video. Yeah. Well, let's play. The audio should be playing for this as well. So I'm assuming that 30 seconds. You might want to actually flick back just to the still once this is completed. Go back and start.
Did it need the audio? It's just some soft synth.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Anyway, your nice low res sketchy image there. I wanted to include this because I think that I've been sort of like hailing the praises of Windows Mixed Reality for a long time, and I know there've been sort of other headsets that have come along, like the Quest, that have done sort of the inside-out tracking. But there's some really, really interesting stuff with this particular headset. And there's people go, it's a cable blur, but 6 meter cable, which is pretty damn cool. 6 meter single cable, lightweight. So that's really positive. But the major thing with this is what it's doing as far as the screens are concerned. The valve index is currently sort of like big boy on the block, and it's got 2 lenses with 1440 by 1600 res, and this thing's got 2 lenses doing 2160 by 2160, which is the same as the old HP Reaver, but they've improved the LCD technology now. They've virtually reduced screen door to 0, and it's got 114-degree field of view, which is only slightly better than everything else. But apparently the visual quality that's coming off of this is absolutely superb, and it just means that if you're using it for more sort of serious use, you're not just playing sort of cartoon games, you can read on-screen text. You could use it for desktop virtualization, use it for a ton of different things, and it's got other additions beyond that. With the sort of major criticism of the original Windows mixed reality headsets was that although the inside-out tracking was good, it didn't track enough because it only had 2 cameras. This one increased that to 4 cameras, sort of fully tracking what's going on at the side of the headset as well, which is really cool. Yeah, and also it's
VR, could you? Because
no, exactly. But also the other criticism of the mixed reality headsets was the controllers weren't really weren't standardized and didn't mesh up. This has been developed in consultation and in conjunction with both Microsoft and Valve, and it basically follows the form factor of the Valve controllers really well.
Is that the default Valve or the Index?
So the Index, the Index controller.
So it's got finger tracking on them.
No, it's not got finger tracking, unfortunately. It's one thing it is lacking. But the sort of
come
like
back to
the
me
layout. So,
questions.
but the thing is that this basically means that there's always been a bit of an issue when you're playing Windows Mixed Reality. When you're trying to play sort of standard Steam games, that the inputs and outputs don't feel quite correct, and it feels clunky. This hopefully will solve that issue. But the main point, really, I suppose, is the fact that the price point's spot on. It's £919 currently for the.
I love you go spot on.
Yeah,
and then
not
early,
900.
You didn't at the end of the sentence. You jumped in before the end of the sentence. It's £919 for the Index, Matt.
Oh, right, okay.
So if you got to the end of the sentence, you would have understood
start with
that.
a 2. If this doesn't start with a 2,
I'm afraid it starts with a 5.
Okay.
But if you're willing to spend, frivol money on a PlayStation, then.
But I love how you started this entire vlog off with, I won't spend more than 40 quid on a game, or 25 quid if it's rubbish,
500 quid on
and a tenner if I'm not that interested.
Get your priorities right.
But I'll spend 500 quid on just a screen that.
And how much are the games to put on this screen? I bet they're not a tenner.
They're free. I already own them. Yeah, I just thought it was cool.
It is very cool. We're taking
it is
nickel,
cool. Yeah,
but,
it is. Very
And
cool,
it's got manual IPD as well, which is the other the only one that had manual IPD up from Windows previously was the Odyssey. So this is sort of a next generation. I mean, again, there was a lot of talk about would there ever be a next generation to Windows Mixed Reality, and yes, there is, and here it is. And admittedly, I've not seen any announcements from the other manufacturers, but HP have really been pushing this. I just love the fact that they've continued development, and they've not done it from an insular perspective. They've gone out and they've talked to the other manufacturers and worked alongside them.
It'd be interesting to see this running, because that's a lot of pixels to shove around.
Yeah,
you need a minimum 2070 to run it.
Okay, so it's high end then again. So
yeah, well, it'll run on a 1080 apparently, but a 2070 is recommended spec.
It's quite interesting because you've obviously, as this entire game about like the next generation of pushing the boundaries of visuals, and actually we've been saying like, to run the next generation of PS5 and Unreal Engine 5 stuff, we're saying, you need a minimum of like a 2080 to actually even push those visuals. And now we're going, well, actually, we want those visuals, but we want them in VR, and just to run the pixels, never mind actually to render them, you need a 2070. So
yeah. It never ends. It just never ends. That's what's good about this job, though, right?
Yeah, it's that excitement of just looking at what's coming in the future, and actually, we're looking at the cutting edge right now, but in 4 or 5 years' time, it'll be commonplace.
I remember Daryl telling me once about cutting edge, when he was younger, and they invented chalk.
You're a funny man.
But we had this discussion last week, didn't we, about how was it 1980s graphics versus now, and then what'll come in 20, 30 years time.
Yeah.
It's just.
I mean, it's what keeps me fascinated with it. The fact that it's a constant evolution. I can't think of an industry that I would be more interested in. It's just
robotics.
Great. It's not gone anywhere. I mean, honestly,
Boston Dynamics Spot is only $75K now.
Bargain.
Well, there you go. You see, and you
Get
complain
that,
about
just-
a 500 quid VR headset.
You get that wandering around your bedroom doing nothing.
He bought an iBo, you know.
I did love my Evo. Regret selling that.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Honestly, yeah, robots. There's a thing that never happened.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, they cancelled Curio, didn't they? But anyway, sorry, tangent.
They're all rubbish.
Let's finish.
Cool. So that was just a little bit of a bit of a chat, a bit of looking at what's being announced right now at the moment in terms of game dev, both from console to PC to VR to game development, a little bit of everything. So hopefully you found it interesting as we do to talk about and to look up. So as Duke just flashed up on the screen there, there's the HudUniGames blog, which Duke keeps up to date, and the other social media of the Twitter and the Instagram. Now, Instagram, we're going to start posting more and more of the work from this year up on there. So if you're a second year or a final year or even a first year, keep an eye out as I'm going to, over the summer, posting work that got submitted onto Instagram.
What we're going to do, student of the time period as well.
Student of the time.
Well, as in, I couldn't decide whether it was week or month, so I just went with time period.
I don't know.
But
can we wrap up, guys? Because I was supposed to be.
I was
supposed to be. I had a meeting 6 minutes ago.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So it was.
Thank you all. Go on, sorry, Matt.
No, go on. I was going
to say thank you all for joining us. We're going to run slightly later next week because of the open day. So it might be
someone's just put, when are we getting Mincy or Chichi on? Well, my meeting is supposed to be with Chichi right now. So
let's just bring him in.
Startle him. I've changed the Zoom invite. It's this one now.
Welcome, Chichi. You're live. No. So anyway, thank you for joining us again. And we will hopefully see you.
That reminded me of Big Brother.
Next week.
Try not to swear.
Okay. Running the outro.